Well, it's time now for a reality check, and today we're going to focus on what is happening with Kulbhushan Jadhav and the ICJ. Now, India yesterday got a victory at the ICJ in the sense that they stayed the execution of Kulbhushan Jadhav. The full hearing of this is still to take place. Here are the sequence of events of what's going to be happening. There is going to be a hearing. India is going to give its case. Pakistan is going to give its case. Although Pakistan is saying right now very clearly that the ICJ doesn't have jurisdiction. So we are going to spend some time today taking a look at what is the exact legality around this, what has been the history, and what is the real jurisdictional issue. But India is essentially going to the ICJ. The reason why the ICJ has given the stay is India said, look, there's no point if you don't give a stay and they execute Kulbhushan Jadhav, then there's not much that can be done later in case our case is found to be correct. But the really interesting thing, if you take a look at the history of all of this, is that India has by and large avoided going to the ICJ. In fact, India has had a very strong position not to go to any international organizations when it comes to the question of Pakistan. The only time I think India went was 1971 when there was an overflight issue on which India did approach the ICJ. Pakistan has tried it a couple of times. 1973, Pakistan went to the ICJ to do with, with the return of Pakistani soldiers to Bangladesh. And then in 1999, Pakistan went to the ICJ at a time when an Atlantic was shot down over the Rann of Kutch. So Pakistan went there. India has tended not to go. The reason why India has tended not to go is that India has referred to something that was done way back in 1974. India made a declaration stating when it will really accept the jurisdiction of the ICJ. And India at that time said that in any dealings with another Commonwealth country or matters of hostilities, it will not be accepting the ICJ or any other international mediation. That's been India's position. Let me now turn to some of our guests. There are other aspects of this, but let me call in the guests and then try and get some of the technicalities of this going through, because Pakistan has its own interesting point on this, where Pakistan says we will not accept the jurisdiction of the ICJ if domestic laws come in. This is espionage, domestic laws come in, so therefore we will not accept the ICJ jurisdiction in this. Now, what's going to actually happen in this and which way is this going to play out? Great to have with us Ajay Shukla, who's a top defense analyst. Mr. G. Parthasarathy, been former High Commissioner to Pakistan, member of the Policy Advisory Group as well. So great to have you with us. Jaydev Rande is of course, former Additional Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, or RAW, if we can call it that. So you presumably know some of this. G.V. Narasimha Rao, it's great to have you joining us as well. Before I start the discussion, Air Vice Marshal Shehzad Chaudhary also is joining us from Pakistan. And if I could just actually get the Pakistan question a bit out of the way, I'm just trying to understand from you, sir, what is the Pakistani reaction to this? Is Pakistan going to accept the jurisdiction of the ICJ? And is it at least going to refrain from hanging Kulbhushan Jadhav after what many consider a kangaroo trial?
Yeah. One thing, obviously we're not as excited here in Pakistan as you are in India about it. What the ICJ put up on the website was essentially an Indian request, which stated whatever it stated in the couple of the pages that have been well known by now to both sides. The Pakistani government will obviously give a more formal response to it tomorrow, sometime by the Foreign Office there. But personally, and not being a legal mind myself, I can share with you that I don't think that this is the Vienna Convention is going to govern how we deal with the matter. And perhaps the Pakistani side might actually invoke Geneva Convention, which deals with conflict, the laws of the armed conflict, and when you pick up spies on both sides during an armed conflict, how do you deal with them? And that Geneva Convention and the additional protocol on the spies is what's going to govern Pakistan's behavior and push him towards the Kulbhushan Jadhav matter.
All right. So, I mean, one of the things that is going to come up is because Pakistan is, and we'll be already hearing this all day long from Pakistan, saying no jurisdiction when domestic laws come in. Actually, the Vienna Convention is something which Pakistan is a signatory to you. Now, in other aspects of the ICJ, nations can declare that it's an opt-in system, that we will accept the jurisdiction in this, we will not accept the jurisdiction in that, and India's done that, Pakistan's done that. When it comes to the Vienna Convention on consular access, however, it is compulsory. There's no choice that either of the countries have once you sign on to the Vienna Convention. So that's pretty much what the ICJ is saying, that how can you flout something that Pakistan has signed up to? We can keep on debating the rights and wrongs of kangaroo trials, but this is Pakistan's obligation under a convention that it has signed up for.
Yeah, what I'm stating, what I'm suggesting to you is that you're playing on a wrong turf of all this while. It is not the Vienna Convention which deals with the protocol matters and state matters between two sovereign states. This is a Geneva Convention obligation that actually determines the
bits of both. You can pick and choose which one you're referring to. The obligations under both the agreements. Geneva Convention, yeah, they are requirements.
Geneva. No. You can't, Vikram, you can't do that. Let me complete what I've got to say. You got two soldiers sitting there who are very well versed with Geneva Convention and what happens to spies. What's going to happen?
It's not been established he's a spy. He was kidnapped from Iran. Who has said he's a spy? He's kidnapped. You have a coerced confession put on television. Who says he's a spy? Okay, we can keep on debating the Geneva Convention.
But let me ask one point before I beg leave of you guys. I think there is so much more. There is so much more that Pakistan can actually take to the ICJ.
Yeah, but
can I just complete my?
I think that's all I'm trying to ask you. I think that's all I'm trying to ask you. Is Pakistan going to accept that the fact that we should go on the 15th of May to the ICJ and let the court see what evidence there is? Will Pakistan
will have a lot more.
Will Pakistan accept the jurisdiction of the ICJ, yes or no?
Pakistan has been saying this for a long time. I think Pakistan needs to take Kashmir, the plight of the Kashmiris, and of course all the other problems that have plagued our relationship for a long time. I think Pakistan would rather take all those also.
I thought you would say that.
This is a matter. Right. This is a matter absolutely and entirely within the domain of the Geneva Convention.
Okay. Air Vice Marshal, thank you so much for joining us. I know we're about to lose a line to you, so thank you so much for having joined us. Partha, let me come to you on that. So, look, it's very clear from what we've just heard what the Pakistani line is going to be. We're going to talk about spies, we're talking about espionage, we're going to talk about the Geneva Convention, X, Y, Z, and the second part of what he said is something that I think we need to pause and think about, because clearly Pakistan is going to now say that, now that we're getting the ICJ into this, let's try and internationalize the whole matter, which is something India has tried to avoid doing, which is why India has not gone to the ICJ or anybody else since 1971.
No, it's quite simple. Immediately after the Kargil conflict, Pakistan went to the ICJ over the shooting down of their aircraft.
And India said we do not accept your jurisdiction.
India pointed out that we had conveyed in writing when the International Court was set up itself that issues involving disputes with the neighboring countries, Commonwealth countries, territorial disputes particularly, will be out of the jurisdiction. We would not accept jurisdiction. So the procedure of the court is, at the time of a particular covenant, if you accede with those reservations stand. Pakistan lost that case because we voiced the reservations. Now, in this case, there are two conventions, and I think our listeners should understand. One is the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, to which both Pakistan and India are signatories, which clearly provides for consular access, open
and that's
trial.
Compulsory, and it's binding on both sides, and Pakistan
but what Pakistan says, there are exceptions. The answer to that is, there is yet another Vienna Convention which is most important. It's called the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Under that convention, you cannot say, I'm going to not fulfill other responsibilities because my domestic law says so.
But if I can just get GVL for a second. GVL, I guess one of the concerns is the government took a decision to go to the ICJ because, and we've heard this from the foreign minister and from others, there was an Indian's life at stake. There was no other choice. They may have gone ahead and hanged him after the kangaroo trial that they've held. They may have gone ahead and hanged him very fast. The risk in this, I guess, and the danger in this is whether Pakistan starts to use this now as a precedent to say, well, now that we've started getting the ICJ into it, let's try and bring other matters before it.
No, Vikram, I don't think these are comparable situations at all, because here what is being sought is that the Vienna Convention, which is a multilateral convention, this is nothing to do with only the two countries, India and Pakistan. And there is also Article 94 of the UN Charter, which binds nations which are signatories or which have ratified this charter to accept judgments of the ICJ. And in this case, we are only asking the multilateral convention, which is the Vienna Convention, to be followed. It could be any two countries. So this has nothing to do with the two, although the dispute is with Pakistan. This particular case really relates to only a multilateral convention and its non-acceptance or non-adoption by Pakistan. They have really not, despite 16, 17 attempts by India, consular access was not allowed, and the case primarily pertains to that. I don't think this has anything to do with the territorial issues involved between the two countries.
Mr. Gandhi, let me just come to you. Now, you of course very well acquainted with the functioning of all these agencies, and especially RAW. Everything that you have seen and heard in this particular case, now India is very clear. In fact, even Iran seems to be indicating more or less the whole thing, which is why Iran's not gone into it. Iran says we wouldn't mind consular access also. The indications are that this is an entirely trumped-up case, kidnapped from Iran, brought into Pakistan, and done. From whatever you are seeing out here, how do you interpret it? Raw agent is what the Pakistanis are saying, or is it? And he has a confession, but presumably a confession can always be tortured out of you.
Quite right, Vikram. Actually, I was very surprised when this case was brought up, or shall I say, pulled out by the Pakistanis. With, I would say, a series of errors in even the manner in which they created the story. The first thing being his appearance inside Pakistan, which has a tale to tell by itself. Secondly, the fact that he has an Indian passport. Now, I know that questions have been raised on that, and people are not willing to buy the fact, all people are not willing to buy the fact that he should not have had an Indian passport. But the fact is that when an intelligence...
Actually, I'm sure you would not be sending raw agents into Pakistan bearing an Indian passport.
Yeah, then what's the point of sending him?
Identity cards and visiting cards and saying, hi, I'm an agent of raw.
Exactly. What's the point of sending him when deniability is the basic criteria on which we function? So that is the first thing that strikes me. And if they had to really try and frame him, they should have given him a Pakistani passport with with a Muslim name, and then, you know, tried to establish a trail that he's not a Pakistani. That would have made more sense.
Ajay, how do you see this thing playing itself out now? You're seeing some sort of denial from Pakistan, questioning of jurisdiction. Do you think they will accept to the ICJ's jurisdiction in this case, go and hear the matter out, perhaps hoping to play it eventually, you know, in some manner of internationalization, or what?
I would be really surprised if they accept jurisdiction, even though the temptation to accept and then bring in Kashmir and dredge up a whole lot of other issues would be tempting for them. But in this particular case, the fact is, rightly, wrongly framed case, whatever the situation might be, they have got hold of an Indian national, a high value asset as they would call it, something that they know India is very worried about, something that they know India would pay a high price to get back, and they are going to milk this for all that it's worth. If it involves repudiating the jurisdiction of the court, the fact of the matter is it becomes very hard to make these things stick in an international jurisdictional environment. Yeah. It's very easy to turn around and say, no, we have this domestic law and we do it. And after that, you can keep arguing. The fact is, Kulbhushan Jadhav is in Pakistan. Pakistan is going to demand a high price for this. We don't know whether it's in terms of a prisoner exchange, because the prisoner that we do have of theirs is a questionable one.